Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive Hobbycast. Daniel here. I hope you are doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. All right, in today's episode, we are going to finish out the Asian DVD nostalgia trip. Now, once again, if you are not watching this or listening to this or viewing this in a video format, I recommend you do so. You can either get a podcast player that supports video podcasts or just watch the episode on YouTube, which I will point a link just because it's much better to see the covers as I'm going through this. So let's get started, and this is going to be the last episode in this series. Okay, so coming up next, coming up first, I should say, we have Survive Style 5 Plus. This is a pretty unique movie, kind of cool. There were 3 movies that came out roughly around the same time, early 2000s, that I kind of consider kind of a trilogy. 2 of them are from one director, and this one is from another. The other 2 are The Taste of Tea and Funky Forest: First Contact. And then we have Survive Style 5 Plus. Very bizarre, kind of surrealist, very modern, definitely products of their time. But Survive Style 5 Plus has 5 kind of interconnected stories in which bizarre things are happening to people and them having to deal with these circumstances. Pretty cool movie. I don't like it as much as I like Taste of Tea and Funky Forest. And the movies aren't, these three movies really aren't connected in any way. I just kind of consider them connected in a weird way in my mind, just because they kind of came out roughly around the same time period, and they are just these weird kind of surrealist movies where random things happen. So that was Survive Style 5 Plus. Okay, and we have Kichiku, or Kichiku, I should say. Kichiku, Banquet of the Beast. This is one that I know I have never seen before. I bought this shortly after moving to Seattle, somewhere in the U District, I remember. But I probably bought it because it says it's unflinchingly graphic and extremely violent. And that was from Tom Mess over at midnighteye.com. Midnight Eye was a really great website for weird movies. So I probably picked it up and just never got around to watching it. So I will have to rectify that soon. And here we have another entry into the Me Too wannabe J Hong Kong horror, K horror, and that is Silk. And I remember picking this up and watching it and it just not being very good. It didn't really have a lot to offer. The acting was pretty poor, and as far as the horror element went, there wasn't a lot of thrills or chills to be seen in Silk. And here we have Shiri. So Shiri was the first movie that I was aware of to be part of the kind of Korean new wave here in the United States, at least part of that Korean cinema to first penetrate into the United States, into the realms of film fans in the United States. It is a pretty early example of Korean kind of a techno thriller, I think you could say, and it was okay. It was good enough that it made me want to seek out more Korean movies. And I think shortly after was probably when I would see like JSA, but not I need to revisit it because I'm not sure if it still stands up. But at the time, it was kind of had this sense of fresh energy that was starting to lack from a lot of the Hong Kong movies and the Korean movies that we were watching at this time. They were very well made. They seemed to have a much bigger budget. They were kind of closer to Hollywood style action thrillers than they were other Asian movies. You know, they were closer in terms of feel, of mood, of how they were shot to Hollywood than, say, Japanese or Hong Kong cinema. So that is Shiri. And that was directed by Jae Kung. And here we have another movie that came out probably a few years after Shiri. And that is 2009 Lost Memories, another Korean movie. And I don't remember much about this. I know I bought this in Chinatown and Vancouver, Canada. And that is really all I remember about this movie, sadly. And here we have the extended version of Dumplings. So Dumplings was part of the Three Extremes collection. It was an anthology of movies, one directed by Chan-wook Park, one directed by Takashi Miike, and then this one here directed by Fruit Chan. And Dumplings is pretty good. It's a pretty twisted movie. I don't want to give too much away because if you haven't seen it, the twist, the surprise is quite good. Now, this movie, Three Extremes, each of the three movies in that anthology, I believe, were also released as longer versions separately. And the three movies were supposed to kind of represent this kind of trend of extreme cinema coming out of Hong Kong and China and Japan at the time, I should say, Hong Kong and Japan at the time, and Korea. And they picked three directors, Takashi Miike, of course, Chan-wook Park from Oldboy, and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, and then Fruit Chan. I think the Fruit Chan movie, Dumplings, is the best. And it is the only one that I have the single version. Kind of like how Tarantino and Rodriguez would do Grindhouse, and then each of their movies were released as extended cuts. That's kind of what Three Extremes is. And Dumplings is pretty good. It's a nice little kind of twisted, almost like a really twisted kind of Alfred Hitchcock or Twilight Zone or something. Okay, and here we have a modern classic, and that is Infernal Affairs. And that was directed by Andrew Lau and Alan Mock, and it stars Little Tony Leung, Andy Lau, Anthony Wong, and Eric Tsang. Just an incredible group of actors there. Some of the four best actors working in Hong Kong at this time. And of course, this is famously the movie that Martin Scorsese would remake as The Departed. But I've always thought that Infernal Affairs was just way better. And it always really kind of like surprised me that they would remake it instead of just releasing this to the theaters in America. I guess kind of back then, even like this was only like 15 or so years ago, I guess. More than that. Oh my God, 20 years ago. Holy crap. Where does the time go? So, but even like 20 years ago, audiences in America still had this weird stigma against Asian leading men in movies. And it's still kind of like that today in some ways. It's just really too bad because I really felt like The Departed kind of just missed the entire point of the movie. This kind of like deeply kind of sad and spiritual element that is present in Infernal Affairs and the acting in Infernal Affairs. I'm sorry, but all of these actors are better in this movie than any of the actors are in The Departed. And yeah, Infernal Affairs is fantastic. And then Infernal Affairs 3. I have Infernal Affairs 2 on a VCD because I think when that came out, that was the only way I could get it. But then I got 3 on DVD. And 2 and 3, I don't think are very good. To tell you the truth, probably couldn't even tell you anything that happens in Infernal Affairs 3. I do not remember anything about it. But of course, Infernal Affairs 1 was such a big hit that they would continue the series into part 3. And here we have an older from the movie from the 80s, and that is Chow Yun-fat's, or he stars in The Postman Fights Back, and that is directed by Ronnie Yu. I think one of Ronnie Yu's lesser-known movies, and probably rightly so. Ronnie Yu, of course, the director of Freddy vs. Jason and The Bride with White Hair, to name just a couple, and I absolutely love both of those movies. And The Postman Fights Back is okay. It pretends to be an epic, but it's really only about 88 minutes long, so it's pretty quickly paced. And it is kind of political with some good action. Director was Yun Ching Young and produced by Yun Woo Ping. So pretty interesting lineage there. But yeah, this is an okay movie. I don't think it is nearly as good as Bride with White Hair or Freddy vs. Jason. But I do think that Ronnie Yu is an interesting filmmaker who makes pretty cool movies. And here we have another one of those Category 3 style movies, although I don't think this one actually was Category 3. Maybe it wanted to be. And this is Naked Weapon, and it is directed or produced and written by Wong Jing, directed by Tony Ching Siu Dong. So Ching Siu Dong, of course, I've mentioned his name many, many times before. Works with Choi Hak a lot, has made many of my favorite movies. Wang Jing has also made a number of movies that I absolutely love. So I figured, hey, Wang Jing and Jing Xiudong together with this kind of like sexy thriller with Maggie Q and Anya and Daniel Wu, this kind of like young heartthrob. I thought for sure this would be a really fun and cool movie, and it is absolutely not anything close to that. It is very boring and just doesn't really have anything at all to offer. I was supremely disappointed with Naked Weapon. And here we have another thriller, kind of another almost kind of more modern Hong Kong thriller, and it stars Anthony Wong and Sam Lee. Sam Lee is awesome, very good comedic actor, but he can also do some good drama. And of course, Anthony Wong, one of my favorite actors of all time, and that is Fist Power. Again, produced by Wong Jing, and again, unfortunately, a movie that just kind of fails to live up to the star potential and the production potential of Wong Jing and Anthony Wong. And even Sam Lee, I felt was kind of wasted in this movie. And there's just not a lot to write home about with Fist Power. But speaking of writing home and speaking of Sam Lee, we have Bio Zombie. Biozombie is one of my favorite zombie movies from any country. It's a fantastic zombie comedy with just a great big huge heart. There's just so much to love about Biozombie. It's the only movie I know of in which a Game Boy camera is used to like peer around corners. Absolutely hilarious. It has one of the coolest fake split screen effects I've ever seen. Just really, oh man, just really good. On a technical level, it looks sharp. It has a really nice pace to it. Has really good friendship between the three leads and some pretty good gore. It's a little light on the gore. It's not one of those gore fests like Brain Dead or Dead Alive, but it does have some really cool zombie moments in it. And if you're just looking for this, I think this is a better zombie comedy than Shaun of the Dead. I really like Biozombie a lot. And here we have a movie called Star Runner. I know that I picked this up in directed by Daniel Lee, and I know that I picked this up in Chinatown and Vancouver, but that is about all I remember from Star Runner. I might have actually turned it off about halfway through just because it wasn't very good, and that's probably about all I remember from that. And here we have a little bit of a more modern Donnie Yen movie. So Donnie Yen and Louis Koo, and that is in Flashpoint. So Donnie Yen made a few movies around this time when he was kind of like maybe making a few more serious movies, and this is one of those, and it's pretty good. I remember there is some good action sequences, but I also remember it being a little on the boring side. It wasn't quite as energetic as I was hoping for, and that is Flashpoint. And Inner Senses, kind of a paranormal thriller slash horror film starring Leslie Chung from Farewell My Concubine and The Bride with White Hair. A really good actor there. Directed by Lo Chi Long, and I'm not sure who that is. This Hong Kong homage to the Hollywood blockbuster The Sixth Sense was also the last film Leslie Chung made before his untimely death. Yes, he died pretty young. He kind of had a tragic life, unfortunately. But Inner Senses, it was okay. Definitely in that kind of post Sixth Sense style. Very kind of low key, J horror, K horror style movie. And probably just an okay example of that type of horror film. And it looks here we have our liner notes for Crouching Tiger. Haven't I think we've already discussed Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But yeah, I know we did because we talked about the microphones music. So that must be the liner notes for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon there. And another one of those super low budget movies that you should avoid at all cost. For a few more yen, they kill. Starring James Shui, Mike Ryan, and Doris Mock. I don't even know why I own this. It's absolutely terrible. I must have got it in some kind of multi-pack or something, but yes. And just a wretched movie. And one that probably is not like that's not the actual name of the movie. Maybe the actual name of the movie is actually shown on the screen at some point, but I do not remember. Okay, oh, here is a unique little oddity here, and that is Legends of the Sacred Stone. It is a I believe a Taiwanese movie, and it features all marionettes. So it's all kind of like the Thunderbirds are Go, but with magical kung fu, a wuxia, magical kung fu, magical flying swordsman movie, all done with marionettes. Really, really cool. It's pretty long actually, and it feels long, but I just like to throw it on just to show people bits and pieces of it because it is so creative in its art direction. If you like things like The Dark Crystal or Neverending Story or these movies that have this really strong aesthetic, this great artistic vibe, these action movies that star marionettes are a lot of fun to watch because the sets are so intricate and so expertly built. And I believe there are some examples of this on Netflix. Not this one in particular, but other examples of. I bought this at Scarecrow. So Scarecrow Video is a fantastic video store, one of the best video stores in the world, and that is up here in Seattle. And they have a section on puppets, and they must have been clearing out some of their puppet movies. But I don't actually think these are puppets because marionettes are different than puppets, right? Puppets you control from underneath, marionettes you control from above. However, this might have some of both. So I'm not an expert on puppets or marionettes. Okay, and next up we have the Banquet. The Banquet. This is one of those post kind of hero style movies, post House of Flying Daggers, where they were really pouring a lot of money into the artistic direction, the artistic qualities of the movie. And to tell you the truth, this is one of the better ones. And this was directed by Feng Zhaogang. I believe the director is from mainland, from China. And this might have been a co-production with Hong Kong and China. And this movie is actually pretty cool. I remember buying it thinking it was just going to be okay. It stars Ziyi Zhang from Crouching Tiger and Daniel Wu. And I thought it would just be like, I thought it would just look pretty. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. But it ended up being a lot better than I did hope for. So yeah, The Banquet, pretty cool movie there. The Assassin. Okay, The Assassin is kind of one of those lost 90s Hong Kong movies starring Max Mock from Once Upon a Time in China, Zhang Fengyi from The Emperor and the Assassin, and Rosamund Kwan, also from Once Upon a Time in China. I'm not sure why she didn't get that credit. But yeah, pretty cool movie. Nothing fantastic, nothing to that's going to really uh, light your senses on fire or anything like that. But if you've seen a lot of these movies from the 90s and you haven't seen The Assassin, it's probably one that I can recommend. And speaking of recommending, of course, the absolutely awesome Tai Chi Fist, aka Tai Chi 2, directed by Yuen Wu Ping. Just an absolutely awesome movie. This has starring Jackie Wu. So Jackie Wu was kind of a young breakout star, kind of like he came up after Jet Li, and I was expecting him to be a much bigger deal. And he definitely had the physical prowess to become the next, Jet Li or the next Donnie Yen, but I'm not quite sure what happened. But Tai Chi Fist has some awesome choreography. Really cool movie. I like Tai Chi Fist a lot. I don't think it gets talked about enough. And Chinese heroes here. I think this might be directed by Douglas Kung. I thought maybe this was another Wong Jing movie because it is similar to a Wong Jing movie. It's very silly, almost a kind of ninja comic book movie, very kind of outlandish and adventurous, but one that again doesn't get talked about a lot, and one that I think is actually pretty cool. And here we have the only Lone Wolf and Cub movie, the only baby cart assassin movie that I own. I'm not sure why. I've been meaning to get them over the last couple years. I've been thinking about buying a set of these because I really do like the movies. And this is the only one that I have on DVD. Animego, they put out some amazing DVDs, really, really high quality with good subtitles. They even subbed the signage in the movies, and they had good historical context in the subs. Yeah, I really, really like the way that they made their DVDs. High quality. They treated the movies with respect. And when you bought one of their DVDs, you knew you were getting a quality product. So that is Lone Wolf and Cub, Sword of Vengeance. Shaolin versus Ninja, another pretty low budget DVD directed by Robert Tai. Robert Tai and Joseph Kuo, of course, they've just made hundreds and hundreds of these movies. That these were probably a lot of the movies that were featured on Black Belt Theater and on television in the West. And I don't remember much about Shaolin versus Ninja. I do remember, though, that this DVD is pretty low quality. And here we have, yes, Lady Whirlwind, starring Miao Ying, Cheng Yi, and Pai Ying, and directed by Huang Feng, I should say. Really cool movie. Not much to see here on this cover. I'm not sure why this cover has so little information. It is from Fortune Star. Fortune Star put out some really good stuff. But yeah, this is a cool movie starring a female butt kicker. So if you want to see something like that, Lady Whirlwind is definitely worth the watch. Ah, man. Okay, Yellow River Fighter. Talk about an underrated movie, and talk about a frustrating movie. This DVD is the only way that I know how to watch this movie. And I love this movie so much. Unfortunately, it has one of the worst dubs I've ever heard. Some of the voices are so annoying that I can barely watch it. But the movie is so good that I do. It has a spaghetti western feel to it. It looks different. It sounds different. It's all mostly shot outdoors, like on location. The director was Ching Yam Yim, and I am not sure who that is. I don't really know anybody who is involved in the movie. Let's see, directed the director of Shaolin. Oh, okay, so I do know him. I guess I just forgot. So, director of Shaolin Temple, which stars Jet Li. I believe that was Jet Li's first major role, and Kids from Shaolin, which is an absolutely hilarious movie. Shaolin Temple I think that was a Shaw Brothers movie, and it was a cross production, I believe, with the mainland. So this has that big kind of epic feel. It wasn't confined to the backlot of a Shaw Brothers studio or maybe a Golden Harvest studio. So it feels different, it looks different, it sounds different. I would love to get a copy of this with subtitles and not dubbed because the dub is so bad. But Yellow River Fighter is definitely worth checking out. And here we have the Assassin Swordsman from the action director of Dragon Inn and Hero. From Zhu Yinping, Tony Ching Siu-dung. So yeah, the action directed by Ching Siu-dung. And another one of his movies I picked up just because I like Ching Siu-dung so much, but it just ended up being not so good. Kind of a later period movie from him. And here we have probably this trilogy. Yep, so we have One Arm Hero, Sam the Iron Bridge, and the White Lotus Cult. One of the kind of probably a direct response to Once Upon a Time in China. And we have a lesser known kind of martial arts trilogy epic. But this one is pretty good. It has some good stuff going on, especially White Lotus Cult is really cool. I like this movie a lot. I don't remember too much from Sam the Iron Bridge, but I know that One Arm Hero is also pretty good. Let's see here. Sequel to White Lotus Cult is the first one. So you can pause there and read that. Corrupt leader in the infamous White Lotus Cult. You know that a movie's always going to be good when it features the White Lotus Cult. So White Lotus Cult, Sam the Iron Bridge, and of course the One Arm Hero trilogy. And a classic from the 80s here with The Prodigal Son, starring Yin Biao and Sammo Hung. Really cool movie. Whenever Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, and Yin Biao were together, you knew you were going to be in for a good time. Now, I'm sure some of you, a few of you who are watching, have noticed that I don't own a lot of Jackie Chan movies. I like some Jackie Chan movies. Project A is in my top 10 of all time, but I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of his movies. I am a bigger fan of the movies from Yin Biao and Sammo Hung. And most viewers will probably also realize that I don't have a single Bruce Lee movie. Bruce Lee was an actor and a man that I respected a lot, and what he did for martial arts cinema I think is fantastic, but I do not like Bruce Lee movies. Speaking of that, we have these knockoffs here. So this is a couple knockoffs that I got in a pack that just had all kinds of really low budget Hong Kong movies in it. And after Bruce Lee came about, there were so many Bruce Lee wannabes. They made so many knockoff movies and so many kind of bootlegs of movies starring people who would change their name to Bruce Lee or Bruce Lee or Bruce Lie. And it was like this whole cottage industry of wannabe Bruce Lee movies. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Bruce Lee's movies. I actually think they're a little boring. I love seeing him. He was a force to be reckoned with on camera, but I'm just not into his movies. And we've already taken a look at the Blu-ray of A Touch of Zen, and this is the old Tai Sing DVD, and I'm really glad that they have remastered the movie and done it proper, giving it the proper respect that it deserves. And another King Hu movie, King Hu, of course, directed A Touch of Zen, and here we have The Valiant Ones. Yeah, this is a really cool movie. Not quite as good as A Touch of Zen, but then again, what is? But The Valiant Ones, if you like these kind of more slower, a little more classical feeling martial arts cinema, King Hu's movies are good, and The Valiant Ones is a good one. And here we have a really early John Woo movie. This might be the first movie that John Woo directed, and it stars a young Jackie Chan, and that is Hand of Death, aka Countdown to Kung Fu. This is a cool movie. I like this movie a lot. It does not feature any dubs, so if you're going into the movie looking for dubs, you will be disappointed. It also does not feature anybody dual wielding 9mm, of course. But Hand of Doom. If you want to see John Woo doing kind of a traditional old school style martial arts movie, definitely check out Hand of Death. Did I say Hand of Doom recently? Just a second ago. Hand of Death. And speaking of those knockoffs, so here is a pack of movies called Martial Arts Masters from Bruce Lee and Sonny Chiba. And this was a 3-disc collection. And the reason that I got this is because of this disc here that features a bunch of the really cool ninja movies from Japan in the early 80s. And that was Shogun's Ninja, Ninja Wars, and Rage of the Masters. Ninja Wars was the one that I really wanted because I remember renting that as a kid, and that movie's pretty cool. It's got lots of blood geysers. And so when I saw that Ninja Wars was on here, I decided to pick this up. Even though the Street Fighter movies are okay, I think they're a little on the boring side. They're okay. I'm not a big fan of that like 70s contemporary movies set in contemporary cities of the 1970s. The martial arts movies like that. But I really wanted Shogun's Ninja and Ninja Wars. I used to rent Ninja Wars on VHS all the time at this little video store by my grandma's house when I would go and stay over at my grandma's house. So I just wanted that really for nostalgic reasons, but the movie is still pretty good. And here we have Kung Fu Shadow starring Judy Lee and Tien Peng, and this is from Chin Chi Hua. I don't remember too much about this. I think I probably wanted it because of Judy Lee. I wanted to see her. I always like when these movies feature female martial artists doing their thing, but I don't remember too much else about Kung Fu Shadow. Oh, the sword. Okay. Starring Adam Chang, who we've mentioned before. And this is from Patrick Tam. And this is one of the only movies in the Hong Kong New Wave of the 70s when Hong Kong was really starting to explore more artistic cinema. And this is one of the only wuxia films to come out of that period. The sword is absolutely beautiful. One of the most beautifully shot movies I have ever seen. Very poetic, very dreamlike. Has a gorgeous cinematography, some amazing action set pieces. This is a movie that really does not get talked about enough. I cannot say enough good things about The Sword. This movie is in my top 10 of all time, and it's one that I sing its praises as often as I can. It's kind of hard to come by these days, I think, and that is really unfortunate. But if you have a chance and you haven't seen it yet, track down Patrick Tam's The Sword. And yes, okay, so kind of like the direct kind of like the direct opposite of The Sword. The Sword is this kind of like lofty artistic masterpiece, and then we have Invincible Armor, which is a masterpiece in its own right, but on the completely different end of the spectrum. This movie is so much fun, starring John Liu and Wang Zhang Li, and directed by Ing Si Yun. Yeah, Invincible Armor is so much fun. One of those just crazy kung fu movies, the kind that you would see on TV on Black Belt Theater, and then you would talk about with your friends at school in the next week. Yeah, this movie is so much fun. I absolutely love Invincible Armor. And another copy of Versus. This must be the liner notes for Versus, which we have already talked about. And another really cool Japanese movie from Hiroyuki Nakano, and that is Samurai Fiction, a black and white movie that was kind of being an homage to old black and white chambara or samurai films, but it injected it with this kind of modern sensibility and modern music and modern sense of humor. A unique movie, one that pays homage to the past, but one that is also with its one foot planted firmly in the future. Samurai Fiction, I would believe, was probably a direct take on Pulp Fiction. But yeah, this movie is very cool. Has a just a one of a kind style to it. Yeah, a different mood and atmosphere. And I highly recommend this movie. I think it was at one time it was making the the film festival circuits, but I think it's kind of been forgotten. It might be one of those kind of forgotten classics that I think people should revisit. And here we have a David Carradine movie, Circle of Iron. Yeah, famously, Bruce Lee wrote the story that this was to be based on. I think this might have been a movie that Bruce Lee wrote that he wanted to be in, but of course he died, and that was directed by Richard Moore and starring David Carradine. And unfortunately, the movie is pretty bad. And it's hard to know how much of Bruce Lee's original vision is in here. I am not sure. Azumi, so another one from Post versus World, and another movie that is just okay. The main problem with Azumi, the movie is okay. It's kind of this kind of comic booky ninja samurai movie, and it has some cool stuff in it. The main problem is the lead actress. She doesn't have the command of the camera. She doesn't have the power behind her swings and her action to be a convincing action star on screen. And it kind of lets down a lot of the action that happens. So Azumi, it's okay. It's not terrible. It's not great, but it's maybe worth watching. And here we have another Korean movie called Fighter in the Wind. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while, and as you can see, no English on this DVD cover here. But this was a movie that was set when Japan occupied Korea, a very tumultuous time in the history of those two countries. And this is kind of a nationalistic movie about this warrior who rose up and helped to defend his village from the Japanese occupiers. I believe that is Fighter in the Wind, if I am remembering correctly. Beautiful cover, though, man. The Korean DVDs really do a good job of making these evocative covers. So you could probably see why I would even pick up this movie to begin with. Deadly Melody, all right, and starring Bridget Lin and Yun Biao, directed by Ing Min Khan. I do not know who that is. Another one of those kind of like flying swordsman movie from the 90s. It was one of those movies that, if you were like me, wanted to collect as many as you can, you would just buy every single one that came out. 7 out of 10 of them would not be very good. Maybe 3 would. And this is one of the ones that is just okay. Deadful Melody. And I believe we've already taken a look at the liner notes for this one, and that is Volcano High. An okay movie. Again, one of those kind of like more modern movies that probably came out after Versus, and has a lot of CGI and not much going for it beyond that. And here we have 2 really cool old school movies, Kung Fu from Beyond the Grave and Chinese Vampire Story. Both of these are great. I like both of them quite a bit. Both of them are definitely these kind of supernatural, hopping vampire, zombie, kung fu movies, and a lot of fun. Both of them are really good. And I do this DVD is pretty bad, but the movies are so much fun that I can overlook the quality of the transfers. And we have Ruko the Goblin from Tsukamoto Shinya. I believe that was the director of Tetsuo the Iron Man. Is that right? I think so. This movie is pretty wild. It has these weird crab creatures with human heads that skitter around. Yeah, and it has this weird part at the end where they go into this weird hell that's all like CGI heads on this fire. Very, very, very bizarre movie. It's like a fever dream. That's about as much as I can remember from that one. Okay, and an old Shaw Brothers movie snuck its way in here, and that is Killer Klans. And Killer Klans, I don't remember too much about. Based on a popular swordplay novel, this colorful and complex saga, whose title literally translates into the poetic Meteor, Butterfly, and Sword. So Comet, Butterfly, and Sword was based on the same piece of literature that Killer Klans was. And that is probably why I bought this one, because I saw that and I like the 90s version, Comet, Butterfly, and Sword. But I don't remember too much about Killer Klans. And here we have a masterpiece here, a classic, Master of the Flying Guillotine. Yeah, this movie just absolutely rules here. Written, directed by Jimmy Wang Yu, the late, great Jimmy Wang Yu. Yeah, what can you say about Master of the Flying Guillotine? Definitely, if you have never seen it, I just recommend you watching it. And this DVD was pretty good. It's the audio commentaries by Wade Major and Andy Klein. Yeah, Andy Klein, I remember I've read some stuff from Andy Klein. I can't remember where he came from, but he was pretty good. He knew his stuff, definitely. But yeah, this is just a really, really fun movie. And speaking of fun movies, Matching Escort, another movie here from this is from the Red Mantis collection. The Red Mantis collection, the Venom Mob films. Yeah, Venom Mob. I don't think anybody from the Venom Mob was in here. Comedy and action mixed with high flying wire work and slashing sword. From 1982. Director Pearl Chung Ling. But this movie is just kind of famously just absolutely bizarre and wacky. And so that's why I wanted to add it to my collection. Pretty terrible transfer, if I'm remembering correctly, but also a pretty fun film. All right, just have a few more. And we have another old school kind of low budget movie here, Shaolin and Kung Fu Mystagogue. Has some really cool traps, like kind of like in the Shaolin Temple. One of those movies that, directed by Ching Peng Yi, and starring Shu Feng, Wang Qi La, Chang Yi, Cheng Xiaoping and Qin Kang. But I love that cover. And there are I remember a few good moments in this movie, but for the most part, it is kind of lackluster. But what is not lackluster is Venom of the Ninja Volume 1. And that is, of course, from director Joseph Kuo, the man who made 100 movies, the man who made 100 absolutely wild, wacky, bizarre movies. And this is one of those. I don't think I have any of the other volumes in this official capacity from Venom Mob Films. But yeah, this is a cool movie. Really fun. And I think all the parts are available on YouTube. And the last movie, the last movie would be Kung Fu Zombie, starring Billy Chong. And this is actually a pretty good movie. If you like those kind of like flying or hopping vampire style movies, I can absolutely recommend Kung Fu Zombie. It is a lot of fun. And this DVD is not terrible. It's not good, but it's also not terrible. Another entry from Ground Zero, which we've seen their movies on this list before. So, all right, that is it. We have gone through all of my Asian DVDs. We are done. I think we're going to do one more episode where we're going to take a look at some books that focus on Asian cinema. But until then, we'll talk to you guys next time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.